Archdiocese of Washington, and my colleague Todd Scribner, the Education Outreach Coordinator here at the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops in the Department of Migration and Refugee Services. A couple of housekeeping items before we begin. I'm Tony Kubay, the National Manager of the Justice for Immigrants campaign. On your screen, or if I'm sending a chat message to you all, it might show as John Galata, but please disregard that. I am Tony Kubay. This webinar, just like all of our other webinars, we turn off the feature where you can speak your questions, but we do take questions. We ask you to type any questions you have in the chat box on the bottom lower left-hand corner of your screen there. You're going to see I just sent something. It says, thank you for joining us today. So in that space right below that is where you would type any questions that you have. Final item I wanted to mention is sometime probably tomorrow, this webinar, the recording of the webinar and the slides will be available on the justiceforimmigrants.org website. And I'm going to type that into the chat box here in just a moment. With all of that, given all of that, I'm finished with my opening housekeeping items, and I want to go ahead and turn it over to Todd Scribner. Todd, you're on. Go ahead.
Thanks, Tony. If you could switch it to the first slide for me, I'd appreciate it.
Good.
Just want to thank for all those who are listening today or when it's recorded at a future point in time. I know that many of you are probably familiar with the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe, but for those who might not be completely familiar, I want to start off saying a little bit about it and kind of addressing some of the ways in which Our Lady of Guadalupe has become an increasingly central feature of sort of American Catholicism and Catholicism within the Americas. So the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe really begins with the story of a poor native Mexican Indian man named Juan Diego, who was born in 1474 and who on a fateful day in 1531 was headed to Mass only to have Mary appear to him on a hilltop outside of Mexico City. It's a common experience for all of us, I know, to have such visions on our way to Mass. But for him in particular, when he spoke with her, she told him that she wanted him to go to the local bishop and request that he build a shrine for her, and that anyone who invokes her name would have graces poured out over them. And perhaps not surprisingly, the bishop, when Juan Diego went to speak with him, wanted proof. He was a bit skeptical of the claims of Juan Diego. And so when Juan Diego eventually returned to speak with Mary, who again appeared to him a few days later, she told him to pick roses on the side of the hill. Now, roses weren't in bloom at that point in time because it was the winter. And so he was a bit skeptical, but he proceeded to do as he was told and was able to gather, countless numbers of roses. At which point she helped to put those roses in his tilma. It's like his jacket, his shirt, and then told him to return to the bishop. And when he went to the bishop and opened up his tilma, these roses, poured forth and poured out onto the ground. And what was left in the tilma was the image of Mary, which is preserved to this day, hundreds of years later. And so now we celebrate the feast of St. Juan Diego on December 9th, which is the day that he first encountered Mary, which is his feast day. And on December 12th, we celebrate the feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which is, it's sort of the end point of his encounter with her. And one of the things that if you look back over recent decades, I think that there's a couple of things worth pointing out, and that is the increasingly prominent role that Our Lady of Guadalupe plays within the life of the Americas, and the individual importance in the lives of many Catholic faithful. So on January 22nd, 1999, Pope John Paul II, Saint John Paul II now, issued Ecclesia in America, which spoke of the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe and points to the way in which America, and this is a quote, America, which historically has been and still is a melting pot of people, has recognized in the mestiza face of the Virgin of Tepeyac in Blessed Mary of Guadalupe, an impressive example of a perfectly enculturated evangelization. So Our Lady of Guadalupe is really seen in this light as a kind of unifying force within the Americas, across boundaries, across borders. Mary, in the guise of Our Lady of Guadalupe, kind of represents something that pulls Catholics together in a spirit of perfect evangelization. It was really in sort of like kind of a new evangelization, which had, kind of became prominent, obviously, in the Pope's readings and writings. And so further along in Ecclesia in America, he calls on the obligation of Catholics to greet immigrants in a spirit of welcome, regardless of legal status, so they can become active members of the local community. And finally, he closed out welcoming the request of a recent Synod of Bishops to establish December 12th as the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe across the continent. You can go to the next slide, Tony. I think I'm probably a slide or so behind. This is a prayer to Our Lady of Guadalupe, which we include in our toolkit, which I'll talk a little bit about later on. Just wanted to show you this. You can go to the next slide. So this is a picture of a prayer card that we have on our JFI website. I believe it's posted up there for St. Juan Diego, which was celebrated, which we used a few years ago actually for our National Migration Week celebrations. I think it was back in 2013 when we used this prayer card, and it should still be available if you're interested in using that. You can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, in January 22nd, 1999, Pope John Paul II issued Ecclesia in America. The following day, on January 23rd, 1999, he provided a homily at the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which is pictured here. And at the homily, or during the homily, he said, the quote as well from what he said, "O gentle Lady of Tepeyac, mother of indigenous peoples and African Americans, immigrants and refugees, for the young deprived of opportunity, for the old, for those who suffer any kind of poverty or marginalization." So this is really, so people begin to look at her, and look toward her, as they have in Mexico and in parts of Latin America for a long time, as really as a source of comfort and protection, particularly for people who are marginalized, and also those who are migrants and those who are seeking refuge in a new home. One of the interesting things I think that's worth noting is that that his trip in 1979 to the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe was part of a first trip that John Paul II made outside of Rome. So it included a visit to the Basilica. And here he confirmed his predecessor's proclamation that Our Lady of Guadalupe was the patroness of Mexico and of Latin America. And now in 1999, he kind of expanded this observation, establishing a day celebrating Our Lady of Guadalupe on December 12th for the entirety of the Americas. So this is sort of, I guess, one of the reasons why, officially it was proclaimed in 1999 that December 12th is sort of the feast day for Our Lady of Guadalupe for the entirety of the Americas, even though it was celebrated, throughout parts of the Americas prior to 1999. You can go to the next slide, Tony. Now, I wanted to point this out in sort of preparing for these comments. Archbishop Jose Gomez of Los Angeles wrote an article called "Mary, Foundress of America." And it was published in First Things, I think in the fall, perhaps, of 2017. It's available online if you want to go read it. But really one of the important things, I think, that this article refers to is really, again, another example of the growing importance that Our Lady of Guadalupe has in the lives of particularly many Latino Catholics, but increasingly for Catholics as a whole who live in the Americas. And he refers in this article to Our Lady of Guadalupe's appearance as the true founding event of America. It wasn't something that happened along, in Philadelphia or along the East Coast of the United States. This sort of the appearance of Mary in the U.S. is really, or in the Americas, in Mexico, is really the founding event because it brought with it a huge period of evangelization across both the United States and Mexico and in Latin America that really established a foundation upon which we need to return if we want to, partake in a healthy and well-lived society. Now, I mean, if you're taken seriously, this sort of image of Our Lady of Guadalupe as the appearance of Our Lady of Guadalupe as sort of the founding event of America, it could point in important ways reconfigure the way in which we relate to the Americas as a whole. Now, how this would play out sort of in real time is unclear at this point in time, for me at this point in time. But it does demonstrate the important centerpiece that Our Lady of Guadalupe plays, and it points to a lot of the potential that using the imagery of Our Lady of Guadalupe and the mission and the message of Our Lady of Guadalupe can actually have an important role, as we move into the future in the Americas, particularly given the tensions that exist and the ruptures that exist, and the migration phenomenon that's ongoing that we hear stories about even here today. You can go to the next story. I just want to brief those by pointing out another way in which Our Lady of Guadalupe has had an important role in what we do and how the Church identifies itself. So first, geographically, her role has expanded, to cover the entirety of the Americas in the ways I spoke of just earlier a few minutes ago. But Our Lady of Guadalupe, while she is an image that's often referred to and appealed to for migrants and refugees, is also a very important piece of the pro-life movement. And there's an intersection here in that way between life and justice, I think. Our Lady of Guadalupe is in addition to being the patroness of the Americas, the protectress of the unborn. The black maternity band that she wears in the image on the tilma signifies at least that she is pregnant and with child. And so oftentimes the pro-life movement will appeal to her in their celebrations. In Pro-Life Month, our pro-life office here in October, which is Pro-Life Month, made her a centerpiece of their celebrations over the past several weeks. It's also connected to the end of human sacrifice in Mexico at that period in time, through the evangelization that occurred following her appearance and the growth of the Catholic Church in the Americas that followed her appearance. It helped put an end, the story goes, it helped put an end to the human sacrifice among some of the native-born Mexican peoples who had celebrated human sacrifice at that point in time. And so, in closing, Our Lady of Guadalupe represents an image that, Catholics can appeal to, immigrants and migrants, those in the pro-life movement, those who are looking for unity and some sense of solidarity, of the Catholic Church in the United States. And December 12th, in which we celebrate Our Lady of Guadalupe, is a really good opportunity for Catholics to reflect how this can be the case and how we can better make it a reality. Thanks so much. I'll hand it over to our next speaker, Sandra. Oh, I guess Our Lady of Guadalupe. Let me close on this. Sorry, I forgot our toolkit. We do have a toolkit, Our Lady of Guadalupe. It's on the justiceforimmigrants.org website. It should be posted now. Right now, it's in English. It's in the midst of being translated into Spanish. That will be posted in the next several days. I imagine the beginning of next week. It provides some resources that you can use as you prepare for your celebration for December 12th. Now I'm officially done. Thank you, Tony.
Great. And Sandra, I want to go ahead and turn it over to you. Again, folks, this is Sandra Coles-Bell, the Program Director in the Office of Cultural Diversity and Outreach in the Archdiocese of Washington.
Tony and Todd, I want to thank both of you for just allowing me to talk about our celebration within the Archdiocese. If you don't mind showing the next slide. I really have taken Walk with Mary and branded this as our Lady of Guadalupe Archdiocesan celebration. It typically occurs on the Saturday before, and we pick Saturday because of the fact that many people are out and available. And also, we wanted to give it a different brand. We didn't want to take away a lot of the celebrations that occur within the individual parishes on December the 12th. So moving it to the Saturday before, opening it up to the entire Archdiocese has been the way that we go. And we branded it specifically Walk with Mary. What I've done today for the audience is give you a flavor of what a typical Walk with Mary looks like from the beginning of our pilgrimage from one of the parishes Sacred Heart in Northwest D.C., and that over a mile walk and procession to the Basilica of the National Shrine, where we then have Rosary, we then have a reenactment. And I wanted to give you the visual of what that would look like. So next slide, please. Everything starts with music. And if you notice, the first thing is the fact that it's snowing. This is from last December. And our Walk with Mary processions have ranged from a balmy 70 degrees in December to the 30s and below. And so this was one from last year. We start with mariachi. We invite them to greet the pilgrims at the Shrine of the Sacred Heart in Northwest D.C. with music as they come together and they gather. And you'll get an idea and see a flavor of the numbers that I'm talking about. We have well over 2,000 to 3,000 people that gather and walk. Next slide, please. On the left-hand side, I think it's my left, you're right, I can never tell, but that is Bishop Dorseyville, who is standing outside in the cold and who is greeting all of the pilgrims and those people who are walking. And I wanted you to get an idea of the snow coming down, of people with their umbrellas, but really embracing the opportunity of looking at and celebrating and walking with Mary. That's one of the best things, I believe, about this entire day. It is spent starting in the morning, walking slowly, meditating over the rosary. Next slide, please. That procession, as you can see, an image of Mary is carried. She's carried via she's on a car, so we don't have people carrying on the shoulder, but it's a slow procession, and the beauty and the reverence with which all of this is done within the Archdiocese in this 1.5-mile procession, I think it's something to behold. I'd like to have the next slide, please. We also see as we walk a commemoration of our Lord Jesus with the pilgrims carrying the cross as they're walking in the snow. Again, done with great reverence, done with great respect. And we are very, very fortunate that we have just a number of people within this area. We have people from all over the world. And I want to share with you as we're going along how this has become a very multicultural event for those people in our Archdiocese. May I have next slide, please? People come and they carry their banners. They represent their churches. As you can see, they're talking about the St. Camilla's Church, which is in Silver Spring. And then also there is another church, St. Martin of Tours, which is way up in Gaithersburg. But people come by the busloads in order to participate in this archdiocesan event. Next slide, please. The great pleasures that I've had in the past couple of years is really understanding one and celebrating the various cultures and of our Latino brothers and sisters as they have come into this country. So I'm always very blessed when I see people come in the clothing and the outfits of their native countries. And I've come to really understand the gentleman in the purple because in their hometown, the former executive director of the Office of Cultural Diversity is from Peru, and he explained to me what the purple means and all of that. It really has a sense of reverence. It's a sense of coming together. It's a sense of reliving, being home again, and processions that would encompass the entire town. And so for this 1.5-mile procession, that's what the feeling is. Next slide, please. I'm always grateful when I see people who come and they wear the image of Our Lady as the lady does. And then also the different images of the tilma that are carried as well. Again, great joy. Next slide, please. As I explained to you, this is also becoming a very multicultural. And so you'll see as we go forward, people of all races, people of every race and every culture, every ethnic background are coming to celebrate and to walk with Mary with us. Next slide, please. Again, truly the opportunity to see, as you're walking through the streets of Washington, D.C., the fact of this is such an evangelical moment for everybody. We can understand what Todd is talking about, that Mary came, and she came with a purpose, and she brought that purpose and changed everyone. And so when I get to see the Americas celebrating, walking with our mother, it is indeed a great day. Next slide, please. We can skip this one. Thank you. And just to give you an idea as you're looking, as you can see, as far as the eye can see, this is our crowd. This is the 2,000 to 3,000 people that are walking through the street of Washington, D.C. A panoramic view, and I wanted everybody to get an idea of what that looks like. Now, if you can imagine, none of this is easy. It's a lot of coordination that occurs with our parish that all of this originates from, along with coordinating with the Basilica of the National Shrine. But it is the beauty of the day, and it's a wonderful celebration. Next slide, please. We can see Our Lady as she's moving up the steps of the Basilica. If you see that street that's on your right-hand side, that's the same avenue, and these are the same steps. This is the same way that Pope Francis took as he was coming into the Basilica of the National Shrine. So it's wonderful to see her carried up the steps and carried into the shrine. Next slide, please. While we have people who are pilgriming and coming and walking with Mary, we also have a number of people that come directly to the shrine, and they come an hour before we start our liturgy. We begin to have the Mass, and we begin to have the Rosary, and we say the 5 decades of the Rosary in various languages to encompass and embody Our Lady and her image and the devotion to her from all over the world. So this is a picture of Bishop Dorsonville. He was the one who was on the steps with the black hat on. He is now at the foot of the image and now leading us in the Rosary. Next slide, please. We start our liturgy with a reenactment. And these are local Aztec dancers who fill the Basilica with the drums, with bells, and with the dancing of the Aztec culture. It is, and the feathers, it is a beautiful sight to see. So I wish I had far more pictures, but there is a devotion that occurs before we start our liturgy, and it is with the Aztec dancers. Next slide, please. Also have somebody who portrays, we do a reenactment of Juan Diego. That tilma that you see that he is wearing is actually handmade. It was handmade for us by a group of nuns from Mexico who sent it to us out of the goodness of their heart. We did not ask for it. It was a joyful gift. And if you got to see it close up, it is done with gold thread, with red thread. The vibrancy of this particular tilma is just remarkable to behold. We have now begun to frame this tilma, and we pass it around the archdiocese to those parishes that want to have it on display and then want to have a small devotion done to it. This tilma was created for us over a year ago, and we've had it all over the archdiocese. So it's an amazing gift that was given to us. The oldest nun, the oldest sister who worked on this was 98 years old a couple of years ago. So it's an amazing gift that she gave to us. So this is Juan Diego. You see the roses at his feet. He walks behind. He comes in behind the Aztec dancers and walks up on the altar and displays the tilma. Next slide, please. This young man, if I had a story to share with you, he actually did this for us a few years ago, and he did it as something to do, and it changed his life. He also was evangelized very greatly, very strongly, and brought back to the faith. So when you see him on his knees, a lot of this is very personal and become very dear to us. And so I'm most grateful when he does this reenactment for us. This will now be the third year that he'll be doing it for us. Next slide, please. And then he walks through the aisle, down the main aisle of the archdiocese, so that people of the basilica, so that people can take a look at this tilma up close. As I said, if you can just take a look at it, it is by far the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. Next slide, please. What we're looking at now is the beginning of our liturgy. We have Cardinal Wuerl in the back and also celebrating the liturgy. We have dozens of priests, as you've seen on the altar, who also partake, and we have priests that are from every culture, from every race. It is, again, a sight to behold. Next slide, please. And I just wanted to wrap up this picture depiction of what Our Lady and walking with Our Lady means to everybody within the Archdiocese. It is, again, a very beautiful encounter. People come and they're greatly moved. They are there from every culture. They're there from every race. And walking with Our Lady has become, for everybody, not just a one and done, but it is, I'm watching it grow as the years have gone on. I'm watching it grow with the diversification of people. I'm watching it grow with the numbers. And the blessings received, I'm sure, are many, as I already pointed out to you. The gentleman who portrayed Juan Diego had an epiphany, had a change, a metanoia, the first time he did it, and he does it for us now. This will be the third year. So with that, I turn this back over to Todd and to Tony. If anybody has any questions, thank you for letting me share with you what's become, as I think you hear and see, very dear to me.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Outstanding pictures. Very, very nice of you to coordinate the celebration every year, and to really to take the pictures and show everyone how beautiful a celebration it is. Folks on the webinar, if you have any questions for Todd or Sandra, please go ahead and type them in the chat box there. I don't expect we'll be on this webinar until the top of the hour, so we do have some time. If you have any questions for Todd or Sandra, I'm going to go ahead and mute myself here for a minute or two, just so that you folks can compile any questions you have. as you folks are trying to come up with questions you might have, I'm just scrolling through the pictures here because they are very good. I mean, they're moving, and what I wanted to say, Sandra, is very nice of you, very outstanding job for chronicling all of this.
Oh, thank you so much. This is my pleasure. It's a gift to me. So I thank you for asking me to share it. As you can hear, if you can't hear the delight in my voice, I'd be surprised. But it is truly, we work on this for months. It's a big team that puts it together. But what an honor for every one of us. And I have enjoyed every time we've done this.
So I don't think we're going to get any questions. I do want to thank Sandra and Todd for presenting on this today. I also want to offer to folks that if you have any questions, again, this webinar is going to be available on the justiceforimmigrants.org website. So if any questions should arise, whether you're listening to the webinar live or in the future, if you're going to be watching this recording, please feel free to send me an email. There's my email address right there on your screen, and we will get back to you with an answer relatively quickly. With that, I want to extend my gratitude again to Todd and to Sandra with the Archdiocese of Washington. Thank you for watching this webinar, and we will have another webinar very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. Thanks, Sandra.
Right.
I appreciate it.
Bye.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.